Real Virginia is proudly produced by the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation. For almost a century, Farm Bureau has been a friend of the farm for all Virginians. Visit our website at vafb.com.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Real Virginia, a show about Virginia agriculture and the people who produce the wonderful local products we enjoy. Brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. Here's what's coming up on this week's program. A cooperative extension program helps women learn basic skills of farm life. Chef Tammy Brawley shows us an easy recipe for homemade bread. And Virginia cattle producers have been working to improve the genetic quality of their herds for years.
Home will always be Virginia, between the Blue Ridge and Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic to Appalachia.
Welcome back to Real Virginia, everyone. We're coming to you this week from a cattle farm in Amelia County. Many new Virginia farmers are women and have little experience with rural life. Ricky Gibson visited a workshop to learn some of the nuts and bolts about farming.
3 years ago, several female Virginia cooperative extension agents saw a growing need for hands-on training for other women entering the field of agriculture. Many of these skills are not taught anywhere else but on the farm. So they started the Women Increasing Skills and Education Program, or WISE. This is the first year it covered both handling livestock and farm equipment in a 2-day session at Graves Mountain Farm and Lodges.
The first session we did the chainsaws, and that was fun. I've worked with chainsaws a little bit before, but not really that much, so it was good to learn about that. And then we did the ATVs, and it was interesting to learn about the pesticides and how all of that can be illegal or legal. I didn't really know that you can't just buy something at the store and use it. You have to be certified or it has to be registered for Virginia. I didn't know that.
The opportunity to learn more about the technical aspects of farming appealed to women of all ages and experience.
So I married into a cattle family, which is a bit intimidating when they grow up, learning how to drive tractors and use chainsaws and, back up skid steers and things like that. And sometimes I feel like I'm late to the party and would like to know those things, and this is just kind of a less intimidating space to ask those questions, to learn those techniques, and to feel more confident to step in and say, hey, I can help you, do this chore today or do that activity tomorrow. I definitely think it's bumped me up multiple levels, just because, if I see that the cows need help feeding and we need to put some round bales out, I can say, hey, I've done that before, and I can go jump in the tractor, and it might take me a few minutes on our tractor to figure out the levers, but then, I've learned the techniques here, and I can get in and just kind of help do our feedings and help the farm, on short notice, which is really helpful.
We designed it for hands-on skills, so we try not to do any PowerPoints. Everything is hands-on, out with animals, out with equipment. Women are driving tractors, are driving skid steers, they're using chainsaws, we're giving shots, we're doing a whole variety of things. And the whole point of it is that it's not just education, but it's physically getting used to some of these skills and things going on. The program is designed no matter if you're 16 years plus, and very used to these, skills and things on the farm, or if you've not even started, that you get that opportunity. And women network during this time period. They teach you their different tips and things that make it easier for them on the farm, and it just gives them opportunity to try things that maybe they haven't felt comfortable with, like a skid steer, or things that they, want a little bit more work with, like maybe backing up a gooseneck.
I love that it was hands-on, and to be honest, I didn't realize we'd be having all the different stations that I thought it was just tractors, cows, and truck and trailer. I didn't know we'd be doing chainsaws and fencing, and I'm just overwhelmed by how much is being offered and how much of it is hands-on. And I'm a child of the 60s, so anything that says women, I'm all over, like just hands down, I'll go in that direction. What I'm finding is talking to so many women who say they're farmers. I've never met so many women farmers, and I'm enjoying talking to other students here as I am being a student learning about equipment. And it's like, oh, I'd like to work for her. I'd like to find out about fencing, how she does it. And she's my size and she's doing all of this, maybe even close to my age.
Safety on the farm is a key element of all the WISE presentations.
And that's one of the reasons why we started this program is, practical on-farm, useful knowledge and skills that will actually make a difference on the farm. And also part of it's safety. So as many, especially like ATV safety and RTV safety, as many accidents as we have, if we can, show these ladies and give them some tips and things and have them have their family be safer, then I think it's worthwhile.
There are so many people that will sit here and they say, oh, well, we have a skid steer, but I've never run it. Or we have a tractor, but I don't know how to start it. And they don't feel comfortable asking because they feel like they'll be looked down on or, treated like an invalid when they just needed a little coaching. And they can come here and get coaching and then go home. And no, they're not going to come out of here a seasoned professional operator, but when they get home, they know enough that they can take guidance. And God forbid something horrible happens and they have the safety precautions to get a tractor off of someone or to raise a bucket if someone's trapped. There's more to it than just operating.
Cattle producer Tanya Harmon saw so much value in her first WISE conference, she came back to teach others the next year.
I had an experience with my first year here. I learned a little trick from one of the veterinarians about dealing with stuck calves. Well, I didn't have any stuck calves that year, but the next year I had a calf born backwards, and it was not too long before the Cattle Wise event, and I was able to go up to Dr. Schramm, who taught me the little trick the year before, and I said, that saved a life, and I wouldn't have known it if she hadn't told me that little trick.
Byington says their next step is to move future programs around the state while maintaining the quality of instruction. It's all about serving rural Virginians, especially the growing number of women farmers.
So it's building a community and also, fostering more skills. It's nice that, like I'm an extension agent and it's nice to have kind of like the actual component of knowledge, but being able to put into practice and what's actually practical, and that's a big thing for me.
The future of agriculture, especially in Virginia, is largely women run. There are incentives to help encourage women and minorities into the agriculture industry. And by doing programs like this, it opens the doors. As the workforce is changing and women are finding ways to make some money but to stay home, it's not an unheard of idea to be able to run the farm. And we run the beef cattle and my husband works and it works out very well, and I can be productive and have a salary of my own and still contribute, but I'm there with the kids, and my kids are learning a very responsible lifestyle. They've learned to work, they have a work ethic, and they have respect for life.
WISE programs are part of a regular outreach to serve women farmers. You can find out more by visiting the Virginia Cooperative Extension's Women in Agriculture page or following them on Facebook. In Madison County, Virginia, I'm Ricky Gibson reporting.
It's not your grandfather's farm industry anymore. The average American farmer is male and about 57 and a half years old, 5 years older than a decade earlier. But meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates 41% of beginning farmers are now women. In 2017, women accounted for 36% of the nation's 3.4 million producers. More than half of all American farms had at least one female producer. More details on this important demographic shift should be revealed later this year when the results of the 2022 Census of Agriculture are released.
Hi, today we're going to be talking about okra from the ground up. Please stay tuned.
Farming is a rewarding way of life, but it can also be full of challenges. If you or someone you know is struggling, call or text the AgriStress helpline at 833-897-2473. It offers 24/7 access to professionals who can support someone in need and help find mental health services in your community. Please make the call, because healthy farms depend on healthy farm families. That's 833-897-2474.
If you're already planting your summer garden, why not look beyond typical plants like tomatoes or snap peas? Chris Mullins with Virginia Cooperative Extension says okra may be an excellent choice. From the ground up.
Well, hello and welcome. Today we're at First Baptist Church in Ashland, Virginia. We're here with June Lynch. June, this is a church community garden, right?
Correct, yes.
And I know you've got lots of people that grow different things here, and you donate to food banks?
Yes, we do.
What a great thing you're doing here, and really a beautiful garden. But today, let's talk about your okra that you're growing in this plot. What do you think about okra? Can that be a good crop for a home gardener?
Absolutely. It's easy to grow, it has few pests, low water requirements really. We've watered this a little when it got started, but not very much.
Okay.
And it is prolific. It's a heavy bearer.
Yeah, that's really good.
Until cool weather.
Okay, right, because it needs the warm weather. It needs sun.
Start with the warm weather, yeah.
So I know these are a little small, and we're at midsummer here, and I know this is we're thinking about what people might want to do for their next garden next spring, and but these get big, don't they?
Yes, they do. About 3 feet tall.
Yeah, they're big growers. You have to give them a little bit of space.
Mm-hmm.
Very productive. I noticed these are very green. They look very healthy. What kind of fertilizer do you use with your plot here?
When we plant these, we use organic fertilizer, and then just a little water, and they take off.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I can see that. These have look like they've done really well. One thing I'm always asked about okra is when they should harvest it. When do you harvest okra?
We harvest when it's 3 to 5 inches long. If you let it get much longer than that, it's a little tough. But we harvest when it's tender, and it's much easier to cook with that.
Okay, okay, that sounds good. And now one of the questions we always get asked too is, are there a lot of disease or insect problems that you see with okra?
No, not really.
Okay.
Something is eating this leaf here, but I don't see any other pests on this at all.
Well, I mean, I think overall it sounds like not a lot of insect and disease problems. A vigorous grower, very productive. And speaking of production, and knowing that you've got to harvest it when it's slightly immature, what do you do with okra? A lot of people have never maybe heard of okra. It's a southern thing.
Very southern dish. A lot of people will dip it in egg and then put flour and cornmeal on it and fry it. That's probably the leading way to eat it.
Okay.
Or just cut it in circles and put it in a gumbo.
Oh, okay.
Tomatoes, peppers, things like that.
Well, it sounds really good.
Yeah, really good.
Okay, well thank you for letting us come out and talk to you about okra today. I think it's a good crop for a home gardener.
I think it is.
Well, for more information about growing okra in your home garden, please contact your local county extension office and talk to a master gardener. For From the Ground Up, I'm Chris Mullins. We'll see you next time.
From the Ground Up is presented with the generous advice and assistance of Virginia Cooperative Extension. Visit their website at ext.vt.edu.
Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen. Coming up on Heart of the Home, Dutch oven bread. We hope you'll stay with us.
Our cow, she walks into the barn, and she gets milked. Milk's taken from her and put through a chiller. And that milk's taken from body temperature of a cow, which is about 102.5, and dropped to 35 degrees and put straight onto a tractor trailer. And it goes straight to the plant the next day. So most of the milk that's sitting on your store shelves is probably less than 48 hours old. And that's a pretty good testament to how efficient we are.
There's just something heartwarming about fresh baked bread. Chef Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen shows us a recipe for Dutch oven bread in the heart of the home.
Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley of the Green Kitchen, and today on Heart of the Home I'm going to show you guys how to make some delicious bread. We're actually going to do a Dutch oven bread. I found it to be one of the easiest ways to make bread. I make this all the time in the winter with soups and things like that. So we're going to get started on that, and one of the first things we're going to learn about is yeast. All right, yeast is a rising product. We have a package of it. Most packages of yeast are about 2 1/4 teaspoons. So if you see a recipe that calls for 2 1/4 teaspoons, 1 packet is sufficient. We're going to add that to our KitchenAid mixer with our whip attachment. Now, one thing that I like to do that you might not see in some recipes, I do actually add about 1/2 teaspoon of sugar. Sugar helps activate yeast. So we're going to add that to the yeast. And then we're going to add 1.5 cups of warm water. You want it to be roughly about 120. You could maybe go to 125 degrees, but really much higher than that, you're going to end up killing the yeast. And so I have the temperature here. It looks pretty perfect. We're going to go ahead and add that to our yeast and our sugar. Now you're going to want this to activate, quote unquote. We're going to raise the lever of our mixer. We're going to turn the whip on. I'm not looking to do it like whipped cream or a batter or anything like that. I just want to mix the yeast in the water and the sugar. It's going to start to get pretty bubbly, which is great. That looks pretty perfect. We're going to drop that down, and now we're going to let that activate for about 5 or 10 minutes or so. In the meantime, what I have here is I have flour. This original recipe that I discovered years ago had just all-purpose flour. Through the years of experimentation, I have found that it works better with bread flour as well. So what I've actually done is I've divided the amount. So instead of 3 cups of all-purpose, we're using 1.5 cups of all-purpose and 1.5 cups of bread flour, and then an extra couple tablespoons here and there. So what we're going to do is actually add to that flour. What you want to do, just run a whisk through it. And the reason we're doing that is we're going to break up any sort of lumps. We're going to aerate it just a little bit. And then to this, I'm actually going to add about 1/2 tablespoon of kosher salt or coarse salt. I'm going to whisk that up. All right, so it's been about 5 or 10 minutes and our yeast is activated with our sugar and the warm water. Now I'm going to come back and add my flour and salt mixture, and I'm also going to attach a dough hook. Now you want to turn it on low. You don't want it on high because you'll end up wearing the flour. So we're going to come back and roughly about 1 cup at a time. It can be a little less, that's totally fine. And I'm going to turn the speed up a little bit on the mixer. You're going to watch the dough, and it's going to come together and it's going to leave the sides of the bowl, but you're also going to see how moist it is. I might turn my mixer off, reach down and touch it. Yep, it is very moist. But I can also see there's somewhat lumps through there, so we're actually going to let it go just another minute. Now it looks a little smoother, which is what I was looking for. And the one thing to keep in mind too when it comes to doughs, you'd be surprised, but if this was a rainy day, you're going to actually have quite a bit more moisture in your dough. I know it kind of sounds odd because we're not standing out in the rain, but it is very true. Moisture in the air does make a big difference. So we're going to come back over to the bowl that we're going to let it rise in. And keep in mind, as I said, this is going to be very sticky. You can do this with a silicone spatula as I'm doing it. If you have a bench scraper, those are great to use as well. And you want to come into a large enough bowl so that it starts to double when it rises. I have a couple of tricks for that rising process. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And you can see how sticky this dough is. Now I'm going to just dip my fingers a little bit in this flour. That'll help get it off the spatula. Just going to scrape that right off of the spatula into the bowl. All right, so now we want to cover the bowl to let the dough rise. We want to cover it in plastic wrap. You want to seal any air pockets out of it. So we've got our air sides are covered. And now what I've done is I actually have a tea towel in the microwave. I'm going to grab it. What I've done is I've wet the tea towel, and when I mean tea towel, I mean a towel that does not have the terry cloth fibers. I put it in the microwave for about a minute or so. And now this is going to help the rising process. You don't want this near any sort of an air conditioning vent or a fan, and then we're going to let that rise for about 2 to 3 hours. We're going to remove our tea towel, then we're going to remove the plastic. And now here comes the Dutch oven part, which I really like a lot. We have a Dutch oven that has actually been preheating in the oven to 450 degrees, a completely empty Dutch oven that does not have any sort of oil or any sort of moisture. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that from the oven. Because this has been in the oven, I don't want to lift it with my hands. We are going to take the lid off. The bread does get baked in the oven with the lid on, so we'll be coming back to that in just a moment. So the Dutch oven is here, and what I have is the risen dough. I have a piece of parchment paper. This little trick is very helpful. We're going to spread a little flour on the parchment paper. All right. And the reason for that is we're just going to kind of manipulate it a little bit into a loaf. I really should have spread that flour out on the bottom, but that's okay. We're going to move it into the Dutch oven with the parchment paper. Not bake it with it, but we're just going to drop it into it. So you're going to watch this. Now, had I taken the moment to spread that flour out on the parchment paper, this would go down a little bit easier, but that's okay. So we're just going to kind of manipulate it a little bit in the pot. Don't worry about that flour. It will bake through. And you should definitely have had this at 450 degrees. It's pretty much at this moment in time probably already crusting on the bottom, which is great. These are actually called a lame or a lame. It's L-A-M-E, and it is a very sharp razor blade. And you want to come back and you want to just cut some indentions in the top of that dough. And that's just going to release some air bubbles is what that's going to do. So now we're done with that, and now we're going to replace the lid. And we're going to go back in the oven, and this is going to bake for about 30 to 35 minutes. Then we can take the lid off, and we bake it another 5 to 10 to make sure the top gets as brown as we want it. All right, so our bread baked for about 30 minutes or so. We've pulled it out. One of the tests of a good Dutch oven bread is to pick the loaf up once it's cooled, of course, and you want to knock on it. It needs to sound hollow, and that does. It's actually perfect. The coloring is beautiful on this. You can see where I use the lame to make the air slits. So now we're going to cut it and put our favorite thing on it, and that's butter. I love this recipe because it's nice and crusty, and it is delicious with hot soups in the winter. It's actually a very good sandwich bread too. It is nice and crusty on the bottom, and that is one of the things I love most about this recipe. I'm actually going to take some whole butter, spread that on there. And we did let this cool for a bit when it came out of the oven. You can certainly leave it wrapped in foil and keep it in the oven if you'd like. Oh, this looks so good. All right, and there you have it, Dutch oven bread. I'm Chef Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen. Join us next time on Heart of the Home.
Recipes from the Heart of the Home can be found on the Virginia Farm Bureau website at vafb.com/recipes, as well as on Chef Tammy Brawley's website at greenkitchenrichmond.com.
Unlike summer crops like corn and soybeans, most Virginia wheat is planted in the fall, gets established, and goes dormant during cold weather. It's then harvested in late spring or early summer the following year. This not only allows growers to keep their land in production almost year-round, it also gives them another profit opportunity. Virginia wheat farmers earned $52.7 million in 2021. Crop rotations like this are also part of many farm conservation plans, since a winter crop helps bind soil into the property during stormy weather. Most Virginia winter wheat is used to produce crackers and cookies rather than bread products.
When it comes to the nation's food supply, few things are as important as consumer confidence in the quality of beef. And as Burkmuller reports, there's a program in Virginia that helps keep quality high for both consumers and producers.
New cattle farmers and farm employees are encouraged to become certified by the Beef Quality Assurance Program. It benefits beef consumers as well as producers.
It's really a commitment that we have three ways. One, to consumers, to make sure that consumers know that we're putting our best foot forward as an industry, trying to use best practices to manage and raise our livestock. It's a commitment to the animals that we're going to treat them in the best way that we can, the best way possible. And it's an investment and commitment to ourselves that we're continuously learning, investing in ourselves, our industry, in best practices.
The BQA program is offered nationwide. In Virginia, there are two parts to the certification process. First, students can attend an in-person instruction session that takes about 2 hours, and many Virginia school districts offer the program for high school students. This is called the Level 1 certification and focuses on best management practices, including feedstuffs and preventable health programs, to to proper injection site locations and record keeping. There's also an online option available on virginiabqa.org, but the in-person option is recommended. Level 2 certification involves training on a cattle chute and is described as the hands-on part of the process. Students learn the correct way to give vaccines and other injections to cows, while minimizing tissue damage. Students can also talk to large animal veterinarians about drug handling and storage. Virginia's BQA website has an event page where students can find a class. They can also speak to their local extension office to find the nearest lesson site. It's important for those who handle cattle on a regular basis to keep up with the latest procedures, even if they've already been certified.
We had changes in our antibiotic regulations, and so making sure that our producers are aware of any changes come in, any new best practices, and so it keeps our producers doing things in the highest quality way possible, the most efficient ways possible too. And hopefully we're, through this program, able to make sure that we're producing the highest quality cattle in the best way possible.
Marshall Slavin is a cattle producer along with his father at their family farm in Augusta County. They raise cattle born on their farm, and they also purchase cattle from the nearly 22,000 farmers across the Old Dominion who are certified in the BQA program.
The beef quality assurance means a lot because of cuttability. Assuring that you're using the drugs that your veterinary has prescribed and your vaccines that your veterinarian has prescribed in the appropriate manner really saves on the cutting table for the finished product.
It's important for the people who buy these cattle wholesale, as well as those who buy beef in the grocery store, to understand that the people who raise these cattle have a baseline of information when it comes to nutrition, as well as administering antibiotics, medications, and vaccines. The certification process can be done in a single day, and producers must go through the recertification process every 3 years. On-site classes are offered and usually take about 45 minutes. There's also an online option through the national BQA website, but that takes 3 to 4 hours to complete. For more information on how to get certified, go to virginiabqa.org. Consumers can learn more about how their beef supply is produced by visiting the Beef It's What's for Dinner website. In Augusta County, I'm Burke Moeller reporting.
We're so glad you could join us this week to celebrate all the bounty Virginia has to offer. From the kitchen to your home and garden to our beautiful wide open spaces, we are proud to say that this is Real Virginia. For everyone from the Virginia Farm Bureau, thanks for watching. Make it a great week.
Home will always be Virginia, between the Blue Ridge and Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic to Appalachia, home in my heart, oh